Can you imagine a family barbecue turning into a nightmare that threatens to tear loved ones apart? I never dreamed that the sizzle of burgers on the grill and the joyous laughter of my sister's kids splashing through the sprinkler would spark a war with my HOA president. Eleanor Thompson, who dared to ban my entire family from visiting me. Who could have guessed that messing with the son of a federal judge would lead to her and her cronies being banned from the whole county? What would you do if someone tried to stop your family from seeing you? I'd only been in Willow Creek Estates for 3 months, drawn by its lush parks and pristine streets, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind the perfectly manicured lawns. The smell of grilled burgers filled my backyard that sunny afternoon, and my heart swelled watching my sister, Melissa, chase her giggling kids. After 6 long months apart, their weekend visit was like a warm hug to my soul. Nobody warned me about Eleanor Thompson. Oh, how I wish they had. Excuse me, what exactly is happening here? A sharp, accusing voice sliced through our laughter like a knife. I spun around, spatula in hand, to see a woman in her 50s storming across my lawn, her blonde hair styled to perfection, her floral blouse buttoned up tight despite the summer heat. She clutched a clipboard like it was her lifeline. "Just having a family barbecue," I said, trying to keep things friendly. "I'm James Davis, just moved in. Can I help you?" Her eyes narrowed as she counted my sister's kids like they were suspects in a lineup. Are these people registered guests? My sister shot me a confused look, and I felt just as lost. Registered? They're my family, visiting for the weekend, I exclaimed. Eleanor's posture stiffened, her voice dripping with authority. I'm Eleanor Thompson, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. According to our bylaws, all visitors must be registered with the HOA office 72 hours before arrival. I laughed, thinking she had to be joking seriously, who demands paperwork for a family visit. But the kids stopped playing, sensing the tension, their little faces clouding with worry. That can't be right. Nobody told me about registering family when I bought the house, I protested. Eleanor's lips pursed. It's in the covenant you signed, Mr. Davis, page 47, bylaw 3.12. She pointed at Melissa's minivan in the driveway, her tone icy. Unregistered visitors, noise disturbance, and that vehicle is parked improperly. Melissa stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. The kids are just playing. They're not being excessively loud. Eleanor ignored her, her eyes locked on me. As HOA president, I must enforce our community standards. Consider this your first formal warning. She scribbled furiously on her clipboard, adding, 3 warnings result in fines. I set down my spatula, trying to stay calm. Look, I wasn't aware of this rule. Now I know. I'll register them first thing Monday, okay? That's not how it works, Eleanor snapped, her smile tight and fake. They need to leave immediately and return after proper registration. Rules maintain our property values, Mr. Davis. My father, who'd been quietly observing from the patio, stood up, his presence commanding even at 65. Judge William Davis didn't need to raise his voice to make people listen. Eleanor, is it? I'm James's father. Are you suggesting my grandchildren can't visit their uncle without paperwork? He asked, his tone calm but piercing. Eleanor's eyes widened just a fraction. And you are? William Davis, federal judge, Eastern District, he replied smoothly. I could see her calculating, her fingers tightening on that clipboard. She straightened her blouse. Even judges must follow HOA regulations, sir. The rules apply to everyone equally. Dad nodded thoughtfully, a glint in his eye. Fascinating interpretation. I'd be interested to see the legal precedent supporting an HOA's authority to restrict family visitation rights on private property. Eleanor's cheeks flushed, but she held her ground. The covenant is a binding contract, Judge Davis. Your son agreed to these terms. Did the terms explicitly state family members require pre-approval? Dad asked, his voice mild but razor sharp. It says all visitors, she shot back, then added with a condescending tone. Now I'll overlook this violation just this once, but please ensure all future guests are properly registered. As she marched off, her heels clicking on the pavement, Dad sat back down, muttering, "Interesting woman." I turned to Melissa, my stomach churning. "Sorry about that. Just neighborhood politics, I guess." Melissa frowned, glancing after Eleanor. "Does she always patrol people's backyards like that?" "First time I've seen it," I admitted. "Probably nothing to worry about, right? We tried to resume the barbecue, but the joy had fizzled out. My nephew, Jacob, only 7, tugged at my sleeve, his eyes wide with fear. Are we going to get kicked out of your house, Uncle James?" My heart broke. "Of course not, buddy," I assured him, ruffling his hair. "That lady's just really serious about rules, that's all." That evening, after the kids were tucked in, Dad and I sat on the patio, cracking open a couple of beers. The stars twinkled above, but a heavy feeling lingered. "That HOA president," Dad said quietly, his voice low and serious. "She reminds me of cases I've handled." "What kind of cases?" I asked, curious. "People who confuse authority with power," he replied, taking a slow sip. "I'd suggest reading your HOA covenant very carefully, son." I shrugged, trying to brush it off. "It's probably nothing, just an overzealous board member maybe," but Dad's expression told me he wasn't convinced. "In my experience, people who monitor children playing in backyards rarely stop there," he warned. Oh, how I wish I'd listened more closely. I had no idea then that Eleanor had cameras at every neighborhood entrance, or that she was already firing off emails to other board members about my problematic attitude toward community standards. Melissa's family left Sunday afternoon, their hugs feeling heavier than usual. Monday morning, I opened my front door to find a formal written warning taped there, citing 3 violations from the weekend: unregistered guests, noise, improper parking. Next to it was a flyer announcing the neighborhood's 4th of July celebration, with Eleanor Thompson as Grand Marshal. My stomach sank. Was this just the beginning? Happy birthday to you. Mom's off-key singing echoed through my kitchen, her face beaming as she carried in a homemade chocolate cake, candles flickering. Dad followed, a wrapped gift box tucked under his arm, his grin warm and proud. Their surprise visit for my 35th birthday was like a burst of sunshine after a grueling work week. "You guys didn't have to drive 3 hours?" I exclaimed, genuinely touched, my heart swelling with gratitude. "Nonsense," Mom replied, setting down the cake with a flourish. "We'd never miss your birthday, sweetheart." We settled on the front porch with iced tea, the evening breeze soft and perfect. Dad asked about work, and I shared the exciting news of my recent promotion. Everything felt so right until I noticed a black SUV creeping past my house. It circled the block twice, its slow pace unsettling. Someone looking for an address? Mom wondered aloud, her brow furrowing. My gut twisted as the SUV parked across the street, and out stepped Eleanor Thompson, flanked by a balding man in a golf shirt and a thin woman with severe glasses. They marched toward my house like an army on a mission. "James Davis!" Eleanor barked before even reaching my walkway, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Those individuals on your porch need to be identified immediately." My stomach plummeted. "These are my parents, Eleanor. They surprised me for my birthday," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The balding man whipped out a tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. "No visitor registration on file. That's violation number 2, Davis." "I'm Martin Greenberg, HOA Vice President," he declared with smug satisfaction. "And this is Diane Perkins, our secretary." Eleanor stepped onto my porch uninvited, her eyes cold. "Unregistered guests are strictly prohibited. We take community security very seriously." Mom looked utterly bewildered. "Security? We're just visiting our son," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. Diane adjusted her glasses primly. "MAAM, without proper registration? We have no way of knowing that." "You could be anyone." Dad stood slowly, his presence calm but commanding. I believe we met briefly last month. William Davis, James's father, he said, his tone even. Eleanor's lips tightened into a thin line. Yes, the judge. Even more reason for you to respect our regulations. Legal professionals should understand the importance of following rules. Dad's eyes narrowed slightly. Legal professionals also understand the concept of reasonable restrictions and unreasonable ones, he countered. Martin stepped forward, thrusting a pink slip at me. We're issuing a $500 fine for this violation, effective immediately. Payment due within 10 days. I nearly choked. $500 because my parents visited for my birthday? Are you kidding me? The first violation was a warning, Eleanor explained with fake patience. Second violations carry monetary penalties, as clearly stated in Section 7 of your covenant. This is ridiculous, I snapped, my blood boiling. They're my parents celebrating my birthday. Diane interjected, her voice clipped. Rules apply equally to everyone, or they mean nothing. Dad touched my arm gently, his voice steady. James, may I see the exact bylaw they're referring to? Eleanor's smile was all teeth, no warmth. Perhaps you should review the covenant you signed, Judge Davis. This isn't your courtroom. We operate under rules our community agreed upon. Martin started snapping photos of my parents' car with his phone. Is that really necessary? Mom asked, her voice shaking with disbelief. Completely, Eleanor replied, her tone final. We document all violations with photographic evidence. They marched back to their SUV in perfect formation, leaving me stunned. I noticed neighbors peeking from behind curtains, some ducking away when I looked their way. I'm so sorry about this, I told my parents, my face burning with embarrassment. I had no idea they'd be this extreme. Dad examined the violation notice, his brow furrowed. $500 is excessive for a simple visitation issue. Have you read the full covenant, son? I admitted I hadn't, guilt gnawing at me. Like most people, I'd skimmed the massive document before signing. You've got a problem here, Dad said gravely. This kind of behavior rarely improves without intervention. Mom's eyes filled with worry. Will we need to register every time we visit you, James? Absolutely not, I declared, my resolve hardening. This is getting out of hand. That night, after we'd blown out the candles and opened presents, I couldn't sleep, my mind racing. I dug out the HOA covenant, its pages heavy with legal jargon, and started reading. The visitor registration policy was there, but it only mentioned extended stays and guests, using community amenities, nothing about family dropping by for a quick visit. The next morning, I trudged over to my neighbor Sam's house. He'd lived here for 5 years. Has the HOA always been this strict about visitors? I asked, glancing around nervously. Sam hesitated, his eyes darting before he answered. It got worse when Eleanor became president last year. Before that, the rules were there, but nobody enforced them like this. Has anyone challenged her? I pressed. The Ramirez family tried when they were fined for having their grandparents stay over Christmas. They ended up with their garbage uncollected for 3 weeks, some route confusion excuse. Then they got weekly landscaping violation notices. My heart sank deeper. Was this what I was up against? Little did I know, the fight was about to escalate in ways I could never have imagined. How could a simple note in my mailbox ignite such a firestorm of fear and defiance? That afternoon, my heart sank as I pulled out a crisp, unsigned slip that read, Board meeting Tuesday, 7 p.m. Your attendance requested. I recognized Eleanor Thompson's prim handwriting from the violation notice, and a chill ran down my spine. What was she plotting now? I called Dad, my voice trembling with unease. Dad, you won't believe this. They're summoning me to a board meeting. He went quiet, the kind of silence that always meant his mind was racing. What are you thinking? I pressed, desperate for his wisdom. I'm thinking it's time we dug into exactly what powers your HOA actually has under county law, he replied, his voice slipping into that steely courtroom tone Mom always teased him about, and more importantly, what powers they don't have. After we hung up, my phone lit up with an email notification that made my stomach churn. The HOA had copied me on a message to all residents, announcing draconian new security measures, visitor background checks, and mandatory ID cards for anyone using community facilities. The first line sneered about recent security concerns from unauthorized visitors. Unauthorized? My family! As I stared at my screen, another email slithered in from an anonymous address. Its words like a punch to the gut. Don't fight them. They always win. Then my phone pinged again, a text from an unknown number. Tuesday's meeting isn't optional if you want to stay in good standing. I glanced out my window at the flawless lawns and identical mailboxes of Willow Creek Estates. For the first time, this place didn't feel like the dream neighborhood I'd fallen for. It felt like a trap closing in around me. My world shattered at 5:30 a.m. when my phone blared and my sister Kate's panicked voice tore through the line. Jake, my water broke. The baby's coming 6 weeks early. My heart raced as I leapt out of bed, adrenaline surging. Stay calm, Kate. I'm coming to get you right now. Kate and her husband, Tom, were staying at my house while their home was under renovation, and the doctor had sworn the baby wouldn't arrive for another month. I sprinted to their room, finding Kate pale and clutching her belly. I helped her to my car, her face twisting in pain as another contraction hit, while Tom scrambled to grab their hospital bag. Breathe, Kate, I urged, squeezing her hand tightly, my voice steady despite my fear. We'll be at the hospital in 15 minutes, I promise. But as I backed out of my driveway, headlights blinded me, and my blood ran cold. A black SUV blocked my exit like a barricade, and out stepped Eleanor Thompson, flanked by Martin Greenberg and 2 other HOA board members, their faces smug under the dawn's gray light. Going somewhere with unregistered guests? Eleanor sneered, pointing at Kate, who was moaning in agony in the passenger seat. My sister is in labor, I shouted, my voice cracking with desperation. Move your car now! Eleanor crossed her arms, unmoved. You should have thought about emergency situations before breaking our rules repeatedly. Tom ran up, his eyes wild with panic. Please, our baby's coming early. We need to get to the hospital. Martin, that slimy vice president, pulled out his phone and started recording, his smirk infuriating. More violations to document. I couldn't believe my ears. Were they serious? This is a medical emergency, I roared, my hands shaking with rage. Eleanor glanced at her watch, her voice cold as ice. Rules don't bend for emergencies. I'll need to see the doctor's note confirming this isn't just another attempt to bypass our visitor policy. Kate screamed from the car, and my heart stopped when I saw blood staining her pants. Call an ambulance, I yelled to Tom, who was already dialing, his face ashen. For the first time, Eleanor's face twitched with uncertainty, but she still didn't budge her SUV, standing there like a tyrant guarding her kingdom. Neighbors started peeking out of their homes, drawn by the commotion, their silhouettes dark against the morning light. Miss S. Wilson from across the street hurried over, her bathrobe flapping, her voice trembling with outrage. Eleanor, what on earth are you doing? That woman needs medical help. Stay out of this, Doris. Eleanor snapped, her eyes flashing. This is HOA business. 10 agonizing minutes dragged by, each second a knife in my chest, until sirens finally wailed in the distance. The paramedics had to park on the street and wrestle a gurney around Eleanor's SUV, their faces grim as they assessed Kate's condition. They loaded her into the ambulance with swift precision, and Tom climbed in beside her, his voice breaking. I'm coming with you, Kate. I whirled on Eleanor, who still blocked my driveway like a stone wall. Move your car now, I demanded, my voice raw. She raised her chin, addressing the growing crowd with a theatrical flourish. The board has voted. Due to your repeated violations, all unregistered guests are banned from Willow Creek Estates. Your family is no longer welcome here. The neighbors gasped. their murmurs rising like a storm. "You can't ban someone's family from visiting," Mrs. Wilson protested, her hands on her hips. Martin waved his tablet smugly. "Actually, we can!" Section 47.3 gives the board emergency powers to protect community standards. I had to get to the hospital. There was no time to argue with these power-hungry lunatics. "My father will hear about this," I spat, my voice shaking with fury. Eleanor smirked, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Oh, yes, the judge. Tell him his title means nothing here. We have our own laws." Finally, she moved her SUV, and I peeled out, my hands trembling on the wheel as I sped to the hospital, rage and fear warring in my chest. An hour later, Kate delivered a tiny but healthy baby girl, and relief flooded through me as I saw her resting, her face peaceful at last. I called Dad, my voice thick with emotion. "Dad, you won't believe what just happened." I poured out the whole nightmare, my words tumbling over each other. The line went silent for so long I thought we'd lost the connection. "Dad, are you there?" "I'm here," he said, his voice eerily calm like the quiet before a storm. "Text me Eleanor and Martin's full names and addresses." "What are you going to do?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Nothing illegal," he replied, his tone resolute. "But no one threatens my family or endangers my new granddaughter." That evening, as Kate and the baby slept, Dad arrived at the hospital. And oh, he wasn't the laid-back guy who'd flipped burgers at our barbecue. This was Judge William Davis, the man who'd stared down criminals and corrupt politicians without flinching, his eyes burning with purpose. "I've made some calls," he said quietly, his voice low and intense, sending a shiver down my spine. "The county record office has some very interesting information about Willow Creek Estates." Tom, pale and exhausted, leaned in. "What kind of information?" Dad pulled out his laptop, his fingers moving with precision. Their HOA was incorporated improperly. Half their bylaws were never properly filed with the county, and Eleanor Thompson's been signing official documents using a title she's not legally entitled to. My jaw dropped. "Can that help us?" I asked, hope flickering for the first time. "It's just the beginning," Dad said, his eyes glinting with fierce determination. "I've also discovered that Martin Greenberg's landscaping company has an exclusive contract with the HOA. Funny coincidence, don't you think, since he's on the board that approves those contracts?" I could see a plan forming, that sharp, calculating look Dad got before delivering a major ruling in court. "Jake, I need you to do something," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "When you get home, check your mailbox. There should be a letter about your property taxes." "Why does that matter?" I asked, confused. Dad's lips curved into a slight knowing smile. "Because your property taxes fund the county government, which has jurisdiction over HOAs, and I happen to know someone who chairs the county oversight committee." As we spoke, my phone buzzed with texts from neighbors, each one more alarming than the last. They sent pictures of Eleanor and Martin setting up orange cones at the neighborhood entrance, a sign proclaiming, "Visitor checkpoint. All guests must present HOA approval." "They've lost their minds," I muttered, showing Dad the images, my stomach twisting with disbelief. He nodded gravely, his face set like stone. "What they're doing isn't just mean-spirited, it's actually illegal." When visiting hours ended, Dad insisted on driving me home, his presence a steady anchor in the chaos. As we neared Willow Creek Estates, we spotted the checkpoint, a ridiculous barricade under the streetlights. Martin sat in a folding chair, clutching a clipboard like a petty dictator. "Your father can enter," he said when I rolled down my window, his voice dripping with condescension, "but he needs to register for future visits." "New policy." Dad leaned across me, his tone deceptively mild. "Under whose authority are you restricting access to a public road?" Martin puffed up, all bluster. "The HOA board's authority." "Interesting," Dad said, his voice calm but cutting, "because according to county records, this entrance road is public property, maintained by county tax dollars." Martin's smile faltered, his bravado crumbling. That's not. Check your facts. Dad interrupted, his words sharp as a gavel strike. I already have. We drove through without another word, but my pulse raced. This battle was far from over. Back home, I checked my mailbox, and just as Dad predicted, there was a letter about property taxes, but something else caught my eye, a certified letter from the HOA. I tore it open, and my blood pressure spiked. They were fining me $1,500 for a pattern of visitor violations and threatening lien proceedings if I didn't pay within 30 days. Dad, look at this, I exclaimed, shoving the letter into his hands, my voice shaking with outrage. He read it carefully, his eyes narrowing, then folded it neatly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Perfect! This is exactly what we needed. How is this good news? I demanded, my mind reeling. Dad placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice steady and sure. Because they've put their illegal actions in writing, son. And that's exactly what a judge likes to see. The next morning, I jolted awake to the sound of car doors slamming outside. Peeking through the blinds, I saw 3 official-looking vehicles with county government seals parked in front of the HOA community center across the street. Men and women in crisp business attire marched inside, carrying boxes and briefcases, their faces all business. My phone buzzed with a text from Miss S. Wilson, something big's happening at the HOA office. Eleanor looks furious. I threw on clothes and rushed outside, my heart pounding with anticipation. A crowd of neighbors had gathered, whispering and watching as county officials streamed into the building. Eleanor stood at the door, her face beet red, shouting at a tall woman in a gray suit. You can't just barge in here demanding documents, she shrieked, her voice shrill with panic. This is private property. The woman held up a sheaf of papers, her tone calm but unyielding. Actually, Miss Thompson, this is a legal inspection under County Code 43.7. We have authority to review all financial and operational records. Martin stumbled up, still in his bathrobe, his hair wild. What's going on? He stammered. The county oversight committee's conducting a surprise audit, someone whispered. And my heart leapt. Could this be the turning point we'd been waiting for? Can you believe a single phone call could unravel a web of corruption that had choked our neighborhood for years? As I stood in the crisp morning air, watching county officials swarm the HOA community center, a tap on my shoulder jolted me from my thoughts. It was Dad, looking shockingly refreshed despite staying at the hospital until the wee hours, his eyes twinkling with a quiet confidence. Morning, son, he said casually, as if we weren't standing on the edge of a revolution. Lovely day, isn't it? I stared at him, my heart racing. Dad, did you do this? I whispered, barely able to contain my awe. His face stayed neutral, but a sly glint betrayed him. Let's just say I made a phone call to an old friend about some concerns. Judge Martinez chairs the county HOA Oversight Committee. My jaw dropped. There's a committee for that? I had no idea. Most people don't, Dad replied, his voice low and steady, and that's exactly how certain HOAs get away with overstepping their authority. Oh, how those words sent a surge of hope through me. Could we really take down Eleanor's reign? Suddenly, Eleanor spotted us, her face twisting with fury as she stormed over, jabbing a finger at Dad like a spear. You! She hissed, her voice dripping with venom. This is your doing, isn't it? Well, you'll find nothing wrong with our records. Dad just smiled, calm as a summer breeze. Then you have nothing to worry about, Miss Thompson, he said, his tone so polite it almost stung. Eleanor's eyes narrowed to slits, her cheeks flushing. 20 years I've run this community without interference. We maintain property values. We keep out undesirables. Dad cut her off, his voice sharp but composed. Undesirables? You mean excluding family members from visiting their loved ones? Creating arbitrary rules without a shred of legal foundation? I could have cheered right there. Eleanor's lips trembled with rage. Our attorneys will fight this, she spat. Dad's smile widened, unruffled. I look forward to seeing them in court. Perhaps they can explain why your HOA has been operating with bylaws that were never properly filed with the county recorder. Eleanor's face drained of color, her confidence crumbling like a house of cards. Without another word, she spun on her heel and retreated to the community center, her footsteps echoing with defeat. Was this the moment her iron grip began to slip? All day, neighbors knocked on my door, their voices buzzing with curiosity and hope. Word had spread like wildfire that my father was behind the investigation, and they wanted answers. I shared what I could, careful not to betray Dad's confidences, my heart swelling with pride at his quiet strength. By afternoon, wild rumors swirled through Willow Creek Estates. Could it be true that the HOA had been charging inflated fees for years? Another neighbor whispered that Martin's landscaping company had pocketed hundreds of thousands for work that never happened. My mind reeled. How deep did this corruption go? At 3 o'clock, my doorbell chimed, and I opened it to find a young woman with a press badge, her eyes bright with curiosity. Jake Davis? I'm Taylor Reese from the County Chronicle. I'm doing a story on HOA oversight. Any comment on the investigation rocking your community? Before I could respond, my phone rang, and my heart stopped at Kate's voice, cracked with fear. Jake, the baby's oxygen levels dropped. They've moved her to intensive care. Can you come? I'll be right there, I gasped, then turned to Taylor, my voice shaking. I'm sorry, it's a family emergency. As I grabbed my keys, I caught sight of Eleanor and Martin lurking near my driveway, their eyes glinting with malice. Going somewhere? Eleanor taunted, her voice icy. Perhaps to see those unregistered family members? My blood boiled. How dare they? My newborn niece is in intensive care, I snapped, my voice trembling with fury. Do you really want to block me again? Martin smirked, smug as ever. The ban remains in effect. Your family's not welcome here. Something inside me snapped, a dam bursting after weeks of their tyranny. I marched toward them, phone recording in my pocket, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. Let me make this crystal clear. If you interfere with me visiting my family during a medical emergency again, I'll personally ensure every news outlet in this county knows your names and faces. Eleanor stepped back, startled by my resolve, her eyes wide with shock. Furthermore, I pressed on. The county investigators have already requested interviews with all board members. I suggest you start preparing to explain why you're using HOA authority to wage personal vendettas. I sped to the hospital, my heart pounding with anger, but laser focused on Kate and her tiny fighter. Dad was already there, comforting Tom in the waiting room, his presence a rock in the chaos. They've stabilized her, he said softly, his voice a balm to my frayed nerves. She's going to be okay. Relief crashed over me like a wave. Thank goodness. I exhaled, tears pricking my eyes. While Kate rested and Tom stayed with the baby, Dad pulled me aside, his voice low and urgent. The investigation's turning up more than we expected, he whispered, his eyes sharp with purpose. The county found financial records hidden in a separate filing cabinet. Martin's landscaping company was paid triple the market rate, and Eleanor approved payments to a consulting firm owned by her sister. My stomach churned with disgust. So they're stealing from us? I exclaimed, my voice thick with betrayal. It appears so, Dad said grimly, and there's more. They've been selectively enforcing rules based on personal grudges. Mrs. Wilson filed 3 complaints about harassment when she questioned fee increases, but the board dismissed them without a second thought. How could they get away with this for so long? By evening, we returned to Willow Creek Estates, and the air crackled with tension. An emergency HOA meeting had been called for 7 p.m., and every homeowner got a notice, a stark contrast to the secretive daytime meetings when most couldn't attend. The community center was packed, the air thick with anticipation. I slipped into a seat near the back, spotting county officials watching from the corner like silent sentinels. Eleanor and the board sat at a table, their faces strained, sweat beading on their brows. Due to concerns raised by residents and county officials, Eleanor began, her voice stiff as a board. "We're holding this emergency meeting to address questions about HOA operations." A neighbor shot to his feet, his voice booming. "Is it true you've been funneling contracts to companies you profit from?" Eleanor's jaw clenched, her teeth grinding audibly. "That allegation is under review," she snapped. Another voice rang out, raw with pain. "What about banning family members from visiting? My grandkids can't even come see me anymore." Martin leaned into his microphone, his voice oily. "The visitor policy protects all residents." Mrs. Wilson leapt up, her eyes blazing. "Protects us from what? From having loved ones nearby?" "That policy was never voted on by homeowners." The room erupted, years of pent-up frustration exploding like a dam breaking. A hand touched my shoulder, and I turned to see Taylor Reese, the reporter, her notepad ready. "Quite a story unfolding here," she whispered, her eyes gleaming. "Care to comment now?" Before I could speak, Eleanor's voice sliced through the chaos, sharp and accusing. "This is all happening because of him." She pointed at me, her finger trembling with rage. "Jake Davis and his judge father are trying to destroy everything we've built. They're outsiders who don't understand our community values." The room fell silent, every eye on me, the weight of their stares heavy as stone. My heart pounded. Could I find the words to make them see? I stood slowly, my knees shaking but my resolve firm, knowing my next words would be splashed across tomorrow's headlines. "I moved here because I loved this community," I began, my voice quiet but steady, echoing in the hushed room. "All I wanted was for my family to visit now and then without being treated like criminals." Heads nodded, murmurs of agreement rippling through the crowd. "But this isn't just about visitor policies anymore," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "It's about accountability. It's about whether a handful of people can make their own laws and enforce them however they please." Eleanor leapt up, her face red with fury. "You have no proof of wrongdoing. This is character assassination." But then the tall woman from the county stepped forward, her voice cutting through like a gavel. "Actually, Miss Thompson, we have substantial evidence of financial impropriety. This meeting is now adjourned pending our investigation's completion. The county is freezing all HOA funds and suspending the board's authority." Gasps echoed, and Martin's head dropped into his hands, his bravado shattered. Was this the end of their reign? As the crowd filed out, stunned into silence, Dad appeared beside me, his presence a quiet strength. "Tomorrow's going to be interesting," he said, a spark of hope in his eyes. "The county judge has agreed to hear an emergency motion about the visitor ban." My heart leapt. "Will it work?" I asked, barely daring to hope. Dad's expression was grave but optimistic. "Eleanor and her board have been operating outside their legal authority for years. It's time someone held them accountable." At the exit, Eleanor and Martin cornered us, their faces twisted with rage. "You've declared war on the wrong people," Eleanor hissed, her voice venomous. "We have connections all over this county." Dad met her gaze unflinching. "So do I, Miss Thompson. The difference is, mine are all within the law." As we walked to our cars, my phone pinged with a news alert, and my pulse raced at the headline, "County launches criminal probe into Willow Creek." HOA board members face possible fraud charges. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope that justice might triumph. Rain pounded the community center's windows, the storm outside mirroring the tempest within. I squeezed through the packed crowd, my heart thumping as I spotted Eleanor whispering frantically to Martin in a shadowy corner, their faces pale with dread. When Dad walked in, his gray hair damp but his eyes blazing with determination, the room fell silent, every gaze locked on him. He placed a thick folder on the table with a deliberate thud, and my pulse quickened. What secrets did it hold? Who invited him? Eleanor shrieked, her voice shrill with panic. This meeting's for residents only. My neighbor Rose stood, her voice ringing with defiance. I invited him. We all did. She swept her arm at the nodding crowd. We're sick of being bullied. Eleanor's face flushed crimson, her composure cracking. This is completely against procedure. Martin, call security. But Martin froze, his eyes glued to Dad's folder, his coffee cup trembling in his hand. Dad stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding, filling the room like a judge addressing a courtroom. My name is Judge William Davis. My son lives here, and I'm deeply concerned about how this HOA is being run. Eleanor cut in, her voice dripping with scorn. We don't care who you are. You have no authority here. Dad opened the folder, his movements deliberate, and my heart raced. Here it comes. Actually, he said, his tone razor sharp, I have copies of every HOA financial record for the past 5 years. Care to explain why $43,000 of community funds were transferred to Coastal Dynamics LLC last year? Martin's coffee cup crashed to the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot, and gasps rippled through the crowd. Dad pressed on, relentless. A company that, interestingly, was incorporated by your husband, Mrs. Thompson. Eleanor's mouth flapped open and shut, her face fish-like in its shock. That's confidential information. How did you get that? She stammered. Dad's reply was cool as steel. Public records. Just like the county property maps showing last summer's landscaping project was mainly done on board members' properties. My heart soared. Could this be the knockout blow we needed? Could a single stormy night really dismantle a tyranny that had suffocated our neighborhood for decades? As the rain lashed against the community center's windows, my heart thundered with the crowd's rising fury. An older gentleman stood, his voice trembling with years of frustration. Is that why our request to fix the playground was denied? Was there really no money left for our kids? My father nodded gravely, his eyes scanning the room like a judge commanding a courtroom. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I've uncovered at least 16 separate violations of state law in how this HOA operates. He turned to face the sea of neighbors, his voice steady but burning with conviction. But what truly sickens me is their selective enforcement. My son's family was banned from visiting, yet when board member Schmidt's extended family camped out for 3 weeks last summer, not a single eyebrow was raised. Shouts of agreement erupted, a chorus of outrage, and I caught Mrs. Schmidt slinking lower in her chair, her face flushed with shame. Oh, how the truth stung. This stops now, Dad declared, his words ringing like a gavel strike, sending a shiver down my spine. I've prepared formal complaints with the county prosecutor and the state attorney general's office. Eleanor lunged for his folder, her eyes wild with panic. You have no right, she shrieked. But 2 residents leapt between them, their faces set with defiance. The room exploded into chaos, voices clashing like thunder. Order, order! Martin pounded his gavel frantically, his face pale as a ghost. Mrs. Patel, a quiet woman I barely knew, stood tall, her voice cutting through the din. My husband's a CPA. He's been questioning the HOA's finances for years, but they always brushed him off. Can I see those records, Judge Davis? Dad handed her a copy with a knowing nod. Page 37's a real eye-opener. Eleanor's face drained from red to ashen white, her composure crumbling before our eyes. This meeting's adjourned, she screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. No, it's not! Rose shot back, her tone fierce and unyielding. Our bylaws let us call an emergency vote to oust board members. I move we do it now. Second. Voices roared from every corner, a tidal wave of rebellion. Could this be the moment we took our neighborhood back? Eleanor snatched her purse, her hands shaking. This is ridiculous. You'll all hear from our lawyer, she spat, storming toward the exit. Dad's voice stopped her cold. Mrs. Thompson, you might want to hold off on that call. The county fraud investigator's waiting outside, and he's eager to chat. Eleanor froze at the door, her silhouette stark against the rain-streaked glass. Through the window, we all saw a woman in a dark suit beside a police car, her stance unyielding. Eleanor turned to me, her eyes blazing with hatred, her whisper venomous. "You set me up. This isn't justice, it's revenge." My father's gaze was calm but piercing, his voice steady as steel. "No, Mrs. Thompson, this is accountability." My heart soared. Had we finally cornered her? Martin shoved through the crowd, his face twisted with rage as he jabbed a finger at me. "You think you've won?" he hissed, his voice low and menacing. "I've got friends in every real estate office in this county. You'll never sell your house, and I'll make sure property values tank when I'm done spreading rumors about this place." My blood boiled. How dare he threaten us now? Before I could fire back, a phone flashed nearby. "Got that threat on video." Mrs. Patel's teenage daughter grinned, her voice brimming with triumph. Should I post it now or wait for maximum impact? The door swung open, and county investigators stepped in, rain dripping from their coats. Eleanor Thompson and Martin Greenberg, the lead investigator called, her tone sharp. "We need to ask you some questions about Willow Creek Estate's financial records." As they were led away, the remaining board members huddled in a panic, their whispers frantic. What had started as a fight over family visits had torn their power structure apart in one electrifying night. But a nagging fear lingered. Was the worst still to come? Weeks later, the TV blared with a reporter's voice outside my house. "Breaking news from Willow Creek Estates," she announced, her tone urgent. In a shocking twist, 5 HOA board members face criminal charges, all sparked by a dispute over family visitation rights. I clicked off the screen, my heart still racing from the whirlwind. 3 weeks had passed since that explosive meeting, and nothing felt the same. My doorbell rang, and Officer Jenkins greeted me with a warm smile. "You've got visitors," he said, nodding toward the driveway. The police had been patrolling regularly since Eleanor and Martin were released on bail, barred from coming within 500 feet of my property. My sister sprinted up with her kids, her laughter like music. "No clipboard Nazis stopping us today," she exclaimed, wrapping me in a tight hug, her joy infectious. My heart swelled finally. My family was free to visit. "Come on in," I called, glancing nervously at Eleanor's house across the street. Its windows were dark, but I couldn't shake the feeling of her watching, her shadow lingering like a storm cloud. Inside, Rose sat with Dad, poring over documents, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We found something huge," she whispered, barely containing her glee. "Remember that community pool project canceled 3 years ago? The HOA collected over $200,000 for it, and it vanished into thin air." Dad spread out bank statements, his voice calm but weighted with discovery. "We traced it to an account in Bermuda." My jaw dropped. How could they steal so brazenly? My phone buzzed with a chilling text from an unknown number. "Back off, or your house burns next." I showed it to Officer Jenkins, my stomach twisting with dread. "That's the 4th threat this week," he said grimly, already calling it in. "We're taking this seriously." Dad leaned in, his voice steady. "They're scared, Jake." The county prosecutors offering plea deals to board members who flip on Eleanor and Martin. Could their empire really be collapsing? A car screeched outside, and my heart leapt as Martin stormed up my walkway, ignoring his restraining order, his face red with fury. "You ruined everything," he bellowed through the door. 15 years building this community, and you destroy it in a month." Officer Jenkins stepped out, his voice firm. "Sir, you need to leave now." Martin pointed at me, his voice dripping with venom. "This place was perfect before they moved in." Mrs. Patel appeared from next door, her eyes blazing. "Perfect? My family endured 3 years of random inspections just for putting up Diwali decorations. Tell us about that perfection." Neighbors poured from their homes, forming a protective circle, their faces united in defiance. "You destroyed our property values," Martin cried, desperation cracking his voice. Actually, Mr. Washington called from across the street, I just got an offer on my house 20,000 above asking. Turns out people love communities free of corrupt HOAs. Martin's face crumpled as police cruisers rolled up, their lights flashing in the dusk. They led him away, neighbors clapping, and my heart soared. Had we turned the tide? That evening, a soft knock came at my back door. I opened it to find Miss S. Schmidt, the former board secretary, her eyes darting nervously. I shouldn't be here, she whispered, her voice trembling. But you need to know Eleanor kept files on everyone. She's planning something for tomorrow's court hearing. My pulse quickened. What kind of files? Blackmail, photos, personal secrets. She's got dirt on the judge assigned to your case. I called Dad immediately, my voice urgent, and he sprang into action, making calls late into the night. By morning, the judge had recused himself, and relief washed over me. Could we outmaneuver her yet again? The courthouse steps buzzed with reporters the next day, their cameras flashing like lightning. Eleanor swept in, her expensive suit pristine, her confidence unshaken until she saw the new judge. A stern woman Dad had never met, immune to her schemes. Inside, her lawyer rose dramatically. Your Honor, this case is a personal vendetta by Judge Davis against my client for enforcing community rules. The judge peered over her glasses, her voice dry. I've reviewed the evidence. This is a clear case of financial fraud, not a rules dispute. Eleanor whispered frantically to her lawyer, who pivoted desperately. My client was just following practices set by past boards. Fascinating defense, the judge remarked, her tone sharp.